Amazing. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Paichaki, and welcome to the PAX Talk with START, Sound Transit's public art program. PAX is a free network for people engaged in public art, over 1,500 members strong. Some of the ways we provide to connect with our peers includes a listserv, a website, in-person events, like the upcoming PAX field trip to Scottsdale, Arizona this November, and online programming like PAX Talks. PAX is 100% funded by volunteer thought power and contributions. If you have an idea for a program, message me or Laura McDermott, who manage the programming committee. And if you want to contribute some money to keep PAX's Zoom account, listserv, and website running, we welcome all amounts of support. I'll put the link in the chat. So now I'd like to turn the mic over to my friend and colleague, Laura McDermott.
Hi, everybody. I am so delighted to be here with you all this afternoon for our PAX Talk with START Sound Transit's public art program. And joining us from Seattle are the incredible staff of this program. And over the next 40 minutes or so, they'll offer a retrospective of their work to bring local and nationally recognized artists' work into stations and transit centers. Just a few notes of housekeeping. We ask that you please stay muted during the talk. There will be plenty of time for questions at the end. And if you do have questions bubbling up inside as the talk is going, please put them in the chat. Renee and I will be monitoring that, and then we'll open it up to Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the awesome START team by handing the mic over to Barbara Lukey, the Deputy Director of Public Art for START. So Barbara, take it away.
Okay, do I need to share my screen or are we all good to go? Um, I'm Barbara Lukey. I get to oversee the art program here at Sound Transit, and we're going to be telling you a lot about some of the projects we've been able to do in the last few years. And it's really great to be able to share the great work, especially of this great team I get to work with. So, next slide. Can you all go around and introduce yourselves, starting with Ashley Long?
Hi, I'm Ashley Long. I'm a senior project manager with the Sound Transit Art Program, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, Kurt.
Hi, and Kurt Kiefer. I'm also a senior project manager here.
Kurt.
I'm gonna pass, and I'm gonna pass it on to Lucille.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lucille Sheesh, and I'm a project manager with the Sound Transit Art Program. And Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Marsden. I'm the collections manager or the art program, the program manager of the art collection is the way we say it around here. And I'll pass it on to Elizabeth.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Smith, and I'm the senior business analyst as part of the START team.
And she's running the slideshow and it's done a great job in making sure we've tried to credit all the artists appropriately. So, next slide. Like many of you, we incorporate the work and thinking of artists into our projects. Artists naturally think about how humans move through spaces, what waiting can feel like, where the light falls and changes. But mainly, artists think about how they can bring their personal practice into creating landmarks for stations. Their artwork brings a human scale to large transit projects and demonstrates that Sound Transit is making a long-term commitment to being part of the community. Next slide. So we aren't a cultural organization. We work for a transit company, and transit is expanding Link Light Rail, which we call it Light Rail Link, commuter rail, which we call Sounder, and developing a bus rapid transit system around metropolitan Seattle, which is where most of Washington State's population lives, if you're not familiar with the area. We've just completed a large build out that's called the ST2, Voter Approved Initiative, Sound Transit 2. We get a lot of local funding as well as federal funding. And we are deep into planning the next two dozen stations, which are part of ST3. Next slide. A cross-lake light rail connection on a floating bridge opened last March, bringing together Seattle and the east side of Lake Washington, which is anchored by the Microsoft Tech Center. This was a phenomenal engineering feat to put light rail on a floating bridge, and it's getting a lot of deserved recognition for that. To our astonishment, the public stood in 2-hour wait lines to ride the trains across the water, and many people told us how much they appreciated the artwork integrated into each station. Some of the 750 art posters we gave away that day are featured in the slideshow. Next. Sound Transit has opened 50 light rail stations, as well as other sounder, and you'll hear about bus rapid transit stations, which are connecting communities and changing how people live. That is truly happening. The way people are riding trains to work, riding them to entertainment, much developing happening around transit stations and more in the future. Today, we will be talking about some of the highlights of how we pulled off this amazing work with the artists and a few things about what this team has learned about incorporating large-scale artwork into mega transit projects. Mega meaning over $1 billion. So a few of the things we've learned are show up prepared, always keep your eyes on the details, be generous, be fair, and be curious. Next. Sound Transit is a public agency that is also an engineering company, one that chose to allocate 1% for art from local construction dollars as a foundational program when the agency was established in 1998. A portion of the art allocation is dedicated to artwork maintenance. While the 36 jurisdictions, also known as communities and tribes, that Sound Transit works with have come to expect that they will have an artist and artwork at their station. Every project remains a challenge to produce successfully to the level of quality we expect from ourselves and our artists. The START team works as artists and art advocates within a complex bureaucracy and consistently works to inculcate the requirements of artwork production with design and construction teams, internal departments like facilities, operations, safety, procurement, and finance, many cities, many neighborhoods, and of course, with the artists themselves. We are determined to help our artists succeed at what may be one of the biggest projects in their careers in terms of sheer size. Our work today is easier because of the work our START predecessors did in establishing the value of public art and the systems and contracts at Sound Transit. All of us are paving a path for the people who come after us. Carol Valenta McDonald was the original START program director. Nori Sato, Jerry Mayer, and Elizabeth Connor were the original system artists, along with Dan Corson. Technical support extraordinaire was Andy Moniz, and Deborah Ashland was devoted to championing art integration as a Sound Transit architect. And then there was Jennifer Babuka, our right-hand person in the early days. In the last few years, we have learned to adapt to changing times. Seattle housing is expensive and studio space is hard to find, which affects how artists practice their work. To lower barriers of entry to artists from a wider swath of people, START has pioneered design-only artist contracts, which reduces insurance needs on artists and greatly eases the artist's financial risk in developing large-scale artworks. Artists can still handle all the fabrication and coordination through their contract if they want to. Fewer are choosing to do that. Artists can work in a planning capacity and research capacity, and as lead artists curating the participation of other artists, and as commission artists working solo on their own projects, which is a style many people tell us they like. That means a significant coordination load has shifted to our quite capable project managers from the artist shoulders themselves. After a few tries, we have found ways to qualify art fabrication vendors in glass, mosaic, porcelain enamel, and fine metalwork. To constantly work toward improving the public art experience for artists and expand the range of what they are able to create, START orchestrated an artist survey process along with artist listening sessions. A few things we learned from that experience. Community engagement is a mystery to many artists. Even in this period where neighborhoods tell us they want to be seen more than they ever have in the past. Artists appreciate our efforts to take the fabrication and installation burden from them. And emerging artists would like more orientation materials about how transit design and construction projects work. We're also getting unprecedented requests from the public wanting to place artwork in our stations. While we develop policies to accommodate this, we're in the process of evolving our own performance and exhibit spaces and rotating art sites. So that's kind of the overview. And now I'm going to hand it off to Kurt and then Ashley and Lucille and Tim to give you more details about specific projects. And there'll be plenty of time for questions afterwards, I hope, or hit us up later, whatever. Kurt.
Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm going to build on what Barbara was talking about and repeat a little bit of it. Elizabeth, next, please. So in the olden days, like 10 years ago, our expectations were that artists were essentially micro design build firms. We didn't know that phrase then, but it's what they were, doing everything from start to finish. In the Seattle area, as Barbara just mentioned, studios are wildly expensive if you can find one. The cost of living is even wilder. And we're seeing that artists are making smaller work, and they also don't have the capital to manage the challenges of a very large contract. So to do that, as Barbara mentioned, we've enlisted the services of a number of on-call fabricators who we can ask to do all sorts of things. But I want to talk about a corollary effect of this effort, and that's been to help grow and sustain specialty fabricators. So next slide, Elizabeth. Thank you. So we had to ask a question recently. What happens when the people you rely upon for so many years go away? This need became very real to us when we were forced, when the firm of Fabrication Specialties, a regional Seattle-based art fabrication company that worked with many, many, many artists, closed its shop. And in fact, Gerald McGinnis, who you can see here on the left, passed away just a few months ago, very sadly. In the image here is a picture of local artist Claudia Fitch's City Hummingbird, which was in the slide rotation that you saw just a little while ago. So about 8 years ago, we decided to advertise a series of RFPs for specialty artwork fabrication services, and ultimately issued contracts for fabricators working in mosaic, vitreous enamel, commercial glass, artisan glass, and two-dimensional metal fabrication. We're really proud that we were able to give some of these very small businesses the boost up they needed to thrive and value our collaborations with them as much as our collaborations with artists. Next, please. On the left here is Serena Martian, who is the studio manager at Titan Mosaic, a newish mosaic fabricator located near Yakima in the eastern deserty part of Washington state. Titan Mosaic grew out of a request to the arts entrepreneur Ed Marquand from our colleagues at the Washington State Arts Commission. At the time, the NEA, remember the NEA, was giving out Our Town grants. Remember Our Town grants? And there hadn't been a successful application from Washington. Ed, who's a book designer and typographer, had always admired the typographic mosaics of the New York City subway system, so set about learning how to make them. I bumped into him soon after he'd submitted his response to our RFP. He'd done it in a hotel room while at a book fair and wanted to, in a very friendly way, give me a piece of his mind about our procurement craziness. But he was successful, and we gave Titan their first major contract, and they went on to build 27 mosaics for our downtown Redmond station. And now we're on to bigger and better things. Next slide, please. 20 years ago, Brian Stockdale, the guy in the shorts on the left here, bought two failing vitreous enamel companies and merged them to become Windsor Fireform, a company in Tumwater, Washington. By the time we gave Windsor their on-call contract, they weren't really small. They'd made a lot of work for transit agencies, including our friends in Los Angeles, for instance, parks and businesses around the country. But they hadn't done a project quite as big as Vicky Scurry's project for our South Bellevue station. Some of Vicky's 225 panels are behind the crew here. Windsor ramped up its facility to make this work and can now make enormous vitreous enamel panels. And just as a side note, they're one of only 2 US companies that can do this work in 4 colors. Next, please. And finally, meet Chelsea Gaddy and Ignacio Lopez of the relatively new art fabrication company Practique here in Seattle. We've known Chelsea for a while, first as a sole practitioner, as she filled in some gaps when FS closed. We quickly realized what an amazing resource she is. And over the last few years, she's won competitive RFPs to fabricate sculpture for us. Ignacio was one of the star FS fabricators, and together they're helping us relax into our new realities. So please clap for artwork fabricators in general. And now I'm going to pass this on to Ashley.
Holding for artwork fabricator, applause. And I'm Ashley Long. I'm a project manager with the Sound Transit Art Program, and I want to thank Kurt and Barbara for that great introduction. You don't mind going to the next slide, Elizabeth. So jumping off everything Kurt and Barbara just described, I wanted to talk through one project in more detail, as it's a good example of how we're working with specialty fabricators and how we're approaching our process. Sound Transit is developing bus rapid transit, or BRT, that will run along the north, east, and south of Lake Washington. There's an existing and expanding light rail service that runs along the west side of Lake Washington. So BRT will provide a critical connection to light rail and other transit services for the region. As bus rapid transit is new to Sound Transit, START had the opportunity to work at the very beginning of the program on the approach to the art integration. We wanted to be thoughtful about how we could include art into the shelters that would have a big visual impact and also support the program goal of consistency and visibility for this new mode of service. Next slide, please. The BRT stations are very constrained sites. Although they're very robust, more so than a typical bus shelter, they're still bus shelters. So we worked early on with the design team who are developing a standard kit of parts for the stations to determine the best way to incorporate art. Through that process, we created a series of glass panels integrated into all of the Stride shelters. Stride is the name of the BRT service. And those would be a place for a 2-dimensional translation of an artist's design. The individual panels are approximately 2 feet high by 7 feet wide and are located in the upper portion of the shelter above the windscreens. This location is intended to prevent damage from vandalism. We wanted to keep the art panels slightly out of reach, and we worked with the station designers and glass fabricator to develop a framing system that would allow a layer of clear sacrificial glass on either side of the art panel to protect them. This consistent location also created space for artists to design a unique element within this very standardized environment that could connect riders to their surrounding communities. BRT is a large project for Sound Transit and for the Sound Transit Art Program. There are 36 shelters, and as shown here, there are 4 to 6 glass panels in every shelter. So another benefit of this more contained approach to the artwork is that it made the process for design, fabrication, delivery, and installation of the artwork a little more manageable. Next slide, please. As we were working on the shelter design team to integrate the art panels into the stations, And in advance of the artist selection process, through the competitive RFP process Kurt mentioned, we had hired on-call fabricators to pair artists with to execute their designs. Given the site and panel constraints for BRT, we wanted selected artists to collaborate with a fabricator that had experience working with artists that we knew could beautifully translate their designs. We also wanted to create an opportunity that lowered the barriers for artists with varying levels of experience to participate and be successful in the project. Judson Studio, a California-based glass studio, was selected to take on the BRT artwork fabrication. Judson's a family-owned artisan glass studio that has over 150 years of experience. They work with multiple processes, including stained glass, kiln-formed, and faceted glass fabrication. Bringing Judson on early allowed them to partner with the design team to provide technical guidance for the panel integration into the shelters. And through the work with Judson, we determined that for BRT, a stained glass panel would be the best approach for them to deliver this giant project. Next slide, please. With the art panels integrated into the shelter and the fabricator under contract, we then decided to hire 2 artists to develop designs for the shelters, one for the I-405 corridor and another for the State Route 522 corridor. This decision was based on guidance from the project team who'd been working with city staff and communities for years on the development of the STRIDE program. And the intent is to create visual consistency in the 2 corridors, and then a stylistic change to guide passengers to their specific bus stops where the systems meet. There are 11 jurisdictions in the service area. So in addition to the scale of the project and just the physical amount of artwork we had to complete, we needed to engage with the cities and communities along the line as the artwork developed. After years of working on the design approach, fabrication, procurement, and setting up the panel specifications, we started the artist selection process in 2024. And for the 405 line, the selection panel selected artist Angelina Villalobos to design the art panels. Angelina is a Seattle-based muralist and public artist, and her work is very vibrant and has a lot of vibrant colors and fluid patterns. Next slide, please. Angelina's approach to the design was to create one composition that celebrated the natural environment of the region and traces the migratory patterns of birds and salmon. She then broke this composition up into individual panels, moving north to south from air through the mountains, the land, and then under the water. She was really careful to ensure that the direction of the salmon would follow their typical migratory patterns. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of what the art panels would look like in the shelter. So this is for the Canyon Park station, and it illustrates how the individual sections of the composition will look in the shelters. Next slide, please. And this is a composition that Judson created of the final fabricated stained glass. Judson spent all of last year working with Angelina on these panels, which are now completed and have been shipped and stored locally. Next slide, please. California-based artist Sonia Ramiro was selected by the panel to take on the shelter art for the 522 corridor. Sonia is an experienced public artist with a robust studio practice, and her work with communities really resonated with the selection panel. And serendipitously, the panels chose a local artist and an artist that lives very close to Judson Studio, which has been logistically advantageous for the project. Next slide, please. Sonia took multiple trips to the service area last summer and met with community members to get to know the region and find inspiration for her design. Her approach to the shelters was to have a recurring theme that would be a through line for the system with site-specific unique elements designed for each individual shelter. So she chose the rhododendron as the recurring theme after visiting the rhododendron garden in Bothell and seeing the amazing colorful varieties in all of the residence yard. She worked closely with Judson to utilize her printmaking practice for the designs, which worked really well for the glass translation. Next slide, please. These are some of the site-specific unique designs that Sonia created for the individual shelters that she developed after spending time here. These are for the city of Kenmore, which is located along the north side of Lake Washington, and she'll be featuring seaplanes. Those are inspired by a small charter seaplane airline that's located in Kenmore, a lake swimmer, and a berry station. There are other stations along the 522, and they'll all have similar unique elements along with the rhododendrons that will be in various colors. Next slide, please. Um, These are renderings illustrating how the rhododendrons, varying in colors, and the unique panels will be incorporated together into the shelters. Judson has a dedicated team working with Sonia this year to fabricate the remaining 522 panels with the intention of completing them, shipping them, and storing them locally by the end of the year. The BRT stations themselves are at the very early stages of construction now, and due to the nature of this program, the station construction will be completed sequentially across the region over a 2-year period between the end of this year through the end of 2028. When the art panel fabrication is completed, we'll have them all stored and ready to deploy to the contractor as the stations are completed and they're ready to install the glass panels. So that's the BRT project and hopefully a good example of how we're approaching some of our projects. And at this point, I want to hand it over to my colleague, Lucille.
Thank you, Ashley. That's a humongous work she's doing, and that's only one of her projects. So I'm going to switch things up a little bit and talk about a very different and a whole new world of public art, ephemeral projects. When we think about our work as project managers for a rapidly growing transit agency, we're tempted to sum it up as permanent art integration, finite projects that result in public artworks quite literally set in stone that the public will live with in perpetuity. Our transit system is supposed to last for 100 years, and this is what we think of when we plan permanent projects. But really, once a station is built and open to the public, it doesn't always mean that our work there is finished. We're moving more and more into the realm of what we call station activation, which can mean a lot of things, not necessarily limited to public art. And as we operate more and more stations and we're extending our reach into the region in all directions, we're seeing more and more requests from the public and from our community partners to inhabit the stations with vendors, performances, and rotating displays of public art. So beyond our more established practice around temporary art as construction mitigation when we're in the process of building stations and we're impacting communities with heavy construction that lasts for years, we're also seizing this new direction as a perfect opportunity to add more rungs to the ladder of entries for artists to participate and grow in our public art programming. I'll be going over a few projects that we have developed and we're working on developing that allow us to keep partnering with local and cultural organizations and to make our stations welcoming, ever-changing, and vibrant gathering spaces. In summary, how we vow to remain active and positive forces as we take root in many, many communities. Next, please. And this takes many shapes. So the Westlake project space here pictured came about as a great opportunity to show art in a very different way than we usually do. We were asked by our facilities colleagues to do something with a vacant display space at the entrance of one of our busiest transit hubs, Westlake Station. The space was cleaned up, equipped with brand new lighting fixtures and an overhead structure that will allow for hanging installations. As it is behind locked windows, it will allow the art program to show the kind of studio art that is very seldom seen in such a very, very public space, and will give passengers the opportunity to see pieces that would usually be reserved to spaces like museums and galleries that don't necessarily feel inviting to most. We're working with the Downtown Business Association organization to program the space. And what you see here in this image is how it looks now in its soft opening phase, as we're working on debuting the space for an inaugural show that will be installed hopefully before the FIFA World Cup starts in June. And what you see there is actually a panel from one of our other ephemeral programs that I'll talk about later. And here's how it used to look like for years. So for context, Macy's vacated their downtown Seattle location in February 2020, and the space was sitting there unoccupied for 5 years with obsolete branding on the windows. You can see on the right where the station is located. It's at the very core of our downtown area, and it's really the center of our expanding system. And funnily enough, I wanted to include that because that was a big surprise when I was visiting my home city in Lyon, France last summer. I came across this very eerily similar project in a newly refurbished station next to one of the most busy train stations. So clearly there's something in the air. Next, please. So, and inspired by the very successful Lightbox program run by our colleagues at LA Metro, ST Art is also implementing a Lightbox program, which was premiered on the walls of the garage of a newly opened station, Ken Des Moines. Lightboxes are a great way to continuously refresh Sound Transit station environments, respond to community interests, and contribute to the development of the regional artist talent pool. Here pictured is the inaugural display with artwork by Toka Valu, who's been an artist that we've worked with for quite a while, starting with very entry level, I shall say, temporary projects, and is kind of graduating to bigger scale public art projects, which is a joy to see. Lightboxes are a very efficient, easily duplicated way to integrate permanent structures to display ephemeral art. However, due to their electrical requirements, they need to be coordinated early into the design process. So we're working on developing a program outline to integrate more into our future stations. And I've added a picture of the LA Metro Lightbox program to give a shout out to our peers in Los Angeles who run a very vibrant program. Another very unique avenue for station activation that we've been exploring over the past 2.5 years, a vacant space that was destined to be a retail space at the ground level of a parking garage, Angle Lake Station, which is south of our airport station, is now a vibrant performance space called the Roadhouse. This project was born from a music feasibility study that my colleague Ashley started during the pandemic. The artist she worked with on the study identified the space.
Listening to a deal.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna wait until everybody's muted. Okay.
We'll mute them. Don't
All
worry.
right, sounds good. So these artists identified that space as a very great potential to exploit a gap in music and gathering spaces in South King County. Sound Transit's working with a venue manager to program and activate the space with concerts, community events, and the cultural workers program. We're working with the local jurisdiction as well, City of SeaTac, and we're in the process of issuing a new RFP and establishing guidelines for the future of the venue, make it more sustainable for coming years. The space was completely refurbished into a functional performing venue, and you can see on this image, local artist Juliana Ken Robinson painted a mural on the wall to create a warm, welcoming space for the public. The cyclorama in our Bellevue downtown station east of Lake Washington, that's now connected to the rest of the system, is another example of a permanent fixture to support rotating 2D art. With its very singular drum shape that was inspired by historical cycloramas and meant to echo the permanent ground terrazzo artwork. You can't really quite see on that picture, but you will see it on the next one, by local glass artist Paul Marioni. The cyclorama offers a very unique opportunity to display art in a 360-degree fashion. Here pictured with its inaugural artwork by Tacoma artist Tiffany Hammonds, And on the next slide, you can see the recent installation showcasing the work of celebrated local photographer and artist Barbara Noah, who really took that shape and that display structure to heart, and she's really designed some very thoughtful photo montage that's based on the theme of motion and concentric circles. You can see the ground permanent piece as well there. And then finally, the graffiti project, which is still in its pilot phase. Graffiti mitigation project was established to respond to an operations need, abating graffiti and vandalism on our station walls. We thought that inviting artists to participate rather than sink a lot of funds into painting over graffiti would be worth exploring as an alternative and more positive approach. So far, the reception from the public and our colleagues in operations who operate and maintain the stations has been overwhelmingly positive. We're working on expanding the program to another location at the same station. This right now it's at a singular station, Capitol Hill Station, which is one of our most urban stations in our very vibrant neighborhood of Capitol Hill. And we're looking to expand the program to another station as well. And I also added the inspiration behind this project. Years ago, I talked to my colleagues from the Paris Metro Authority, Transit Authority, and I was really dazzled by their new program where they are inviting street artists to work directly and during revenue hours in the walls of a newly refurbished station. And I thought that was a very clever way for them to address the vandalism issue and make welcoming spaces with artists working. And that's it for now. I'll pass it on to my colleague Tim Marsden.
Okay, I found the audio button. So, hello, I'm Tim Marsden, the art collection steward for Sound Transit Artworks. And just like the Super Bowl, when the parade is over and everybody's cheered on the winning team, along comes the little cart sweeping up the confetti afterwards, and that is my role here at Sound Transit. If I can have the next slide, please. Another map, just to show you the Herculean effort that goes into the maintaining of the Sound Transit Art Collection. It is a collection that spans from Everett down to DuPont, which is probably around, gosh, I'd say 60 or 70 miles, with a 25-mile stretch out into Issaquah as well. And so it's a large area, and it covers 3 lines of business. We have the bus rapid transit, which I've been around so long, I still call it REX for Regional Express. We have the Sounder commuter rail, which is a heavy rail that runs from Tacoma into Seattle and from Everett into Seattle and then back to the respective spots at the end of the day. And then, of course, the Link Light Rail, which is the main thrust of our capital push at the moment with BRT or Bus Rapid Transit, no acronyms. But the latest developments have been with extensions into across the bridge, into the east side, and also expanding ever north to Linwood and ever south to Federal Way. We're expecting to be getting along to Tacoma and going up to Everett as well in the intervening years. So there's about 250 artworks in our collection. It kind of depends on how you count it. There's 50 pieces in Redmond alone, but that's done by 10 artists. So is it 10 different pieces? Is it 50 different pieces, or is it just one big giant installation out in Redmond? I'm going to count. I'll make it sound better. So we've got 300 pieces in our collection. So It sounds a lot more. And all of this is funded by 3 separate counties. There's the Snohomish County in the north, King, where the lion's share of the population resides, and then there's Pierce County as well to the south. Now, if we could have the next slide, that would be handy. And so, as Barbara mentioned earlier on, the art program is funded with a 1% for art funding, and that's calculated from construction budgets. Not all construction. There's no federal money that's included in that equation, and things like tunneling and sort of extra sort of mega projects are also not really in that mix. But from that 1%, I am given a 12% of that 1%. Gosh, I can't even do the math on that. And that is dedicated to manage the art assets. Now, that's been moved up from a 10% of the 1% that was previously. And it's just the past couple of years, we've, with the onset of the ST3 funding, that we've gone up to 12% on that. And with all that is a lifetime allocation. So, which apparently makes me the most envied boy in art stewardship throughout the region and possibly the country. It's probably a little bit of a double-edged sword. I know there's enough lifetime there that it'll probably last until I leave. But I'm a little bit concerned with what lifetime actually means. But with that money, we have, we take care of cleaning of the artwork, and we manage a contract that includes, well, depending on the Redmond piece, somewhere between 70 to 100 artworks that just need cleaning. And that means that we can get a crew out there putting eyeballs on pieces. They're taking photos before they clean and taking photos after they clean, so that we can monitor any sort of changes in the in paint, or if there's or even with granite, if there's anything growing on it, and depending if we want to mitigate that or not. So it also includes, so with the cleaning, these pieces get an annual cleaning, and there's usually no other associated sort of maintenance. There's not really any repair work with any of that. It's just a straight cleaning. If I get some information from my cleaning crew, I can go and inspect it myself. And that would be sort of doing the general maintenance, which is also included in this 12%. Now, graffiti removal is one of those things. Everybody says as soon as the station's open, oh, that's going to get covered in graffiti. That is, oh, geez, you're going to be out here all the time. And weirdly, we don't actually get a lot of graffiti on the artwork. It's usually on the large expanses of blank walls that everybody seems to want, and any sort of graffiti is usually fairly small scale and can be removed with like a little graffiti removal. I've been using clean sweeps or even just basic acetone. Now, repairs as well, they're sort of a larger projects on pieces that are, needing some kind of midlife maintenance. Case in point, we had a piece out in Sumner, and somebody drove their car into the legs of it, and we had to go through, removing the bent leg, refabricating, repainting, and then reinstalling. And so those projects come up, and I usually budget for a few that I would like on a wish list that I would like to get done. But more often than not, things get delayed or something else happens, and it becomes a bit of an emergency, and that takes a priority. If I could get to the next slide. I wanted to go through just a few oddball things that I've encountered in my role here. And one of them is to do with the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel. I'm going to refer to that as the DSTT from now on, but I wanted to get the, so you know what the acronym stands for. And this was a transit project from the 80s in Seattle, where Metro built a bus tunnel going underneath 3rd Avenue through the city. So it took the buses from the street and then and put them underground and ran them pretty much through the whole downtown corridor. Now, there'd always been anticipated when Sound Transit started that they would end up like working in tandem or, taking over the DSTT. And um, of just about 2 or 3 years ago, it became fully official that that the tunnel was turned over to Sound Transit, and I inherited 35 artworks in that tunnel. And during the 80s, this was a massive project that was really quite groundbreaking on public art. It had artists embedded in with the design teams, and we're working very hand in hand with the architects and engineers while they were going. It was a bit of a groundbreaker on that. But we have these 35 pieces that are fairly old. And what's fascinating about the transit tunnel is that it's a little time capsule. I absolutely love this thing. With the history of public art within our system anyway, as you can see, going up from the heavy rail into the like transit centers for the buses, and then of course the light rail stations. This itself is like it's been preserved in amber. If you want to know what Seattle was like in 1989, you can have a wander down to Westlake Station and get pretty realistic idea on that. Now, a lot of these pieces are, this is what we're talking about when we're looking at midlife maintenance. The pieces are fairly robust. Access can be tricky due to we're running trains through here, but the bringing a separate collection into the larger collection has for some reason delighted me. I just I love having this sort of separate thing that's part of a larger thing. And we can flick to the next one. And oh, here we go. Aha. And I wanted to bring a couple of little oddball projects, ones that came up that you wouldn't think. We have a piece called "In the Still Point" by Nancy Chu and Jacqueline Mells out in Mount Lake Terrace HOV station. That's high occupancy vehicle for those of you who are acronymically challenged. And somebody attempted to cut the end off the log with an angle grinder, but either got bored or their battery ran out. But suffice it to say, they did leave like about a 7 to 8 inch gash right at the end of the at the end of the log. Now we couldn't really get the piece out to take it into the shop, so we managed to with Chelsea Gaddy and Ignacio Lopez's help from Practic, we managed to do an in the field repair, and I think that probably we had all the equipment we needed thanks to Chelsea's ability to overthink, so you don't have to. Is one of the great reasons to work with Chelsea. And Ignacio himself could probably weld for the U.S. men's Olympic welding team. It's just a delight to watch. And you can see that it hasn't been fully patinaed yet on the image on the right, but it's as near invisible as it can be. And now, up until today, only 3 people could see where that repair was, but now all of you can too. And the last one here, on the installation, this is a rather small project, but it was what was interesting about this is that I managed to pull this repair off completely in-house. We didn't use any outside vendors. We had an issue with the attachment points of this tiara that's going across the top of a building, and it was bending over and looked a little bit precarious. So we took the piece down, and I worked with our structural engineers, and we in-house developed a new system for attaching. And then I worked with our facilities team out of from the south, out of the Auburn warehouse, and we ganged up, rolled up our sleeves, and reinstalled the piece in a much safer fashion. And I don't know how I can stress enough just how excited I was to pull this off with, completely in-house. It's such a rarity around here. And if it wasn't for our facilities group, I would be really, really sort of hamstrung on a lot of projects. They kind of work as my eyes and ears out in spots that I can't see. So I'm giving a shout out to the facilities crew here as well. And I think that is about me. Have we got any questions? I would like to do a shout out to Elizabeth for moving those slides along at a fantastic rate, and to the my project managers of who I wave my fist at the sky at sometimes, but for the most part, we get on pretty well.
Thank you all. That was excellent. I hope you're seeing all the applause and hearts on the screen. Let's open up for questions. I'll start with one while people are thinking of theirs. I just want to start with a compliment first. First, what an epic collection, right? Like, just so many years of work. There's so many ways that we can talk about this, but I want to say, I'm so impressed with the frameworks that you developed for people new to public art to kind of get a start, that they're ambitious, right? Like, they're not like easy vinyl projects on, and there's nothing wrong with those, right? But like, to pre-select that stained glass fabricator, right? It was so great. So, and I love the cyclorama. I'm asking for a friend. If you guys built a whole new system, right? And I'm sure you talk to public art agencies or transit agencies across the country. Any suggestions for easy lift projects for people who aren't building a new system? Like, if you're retrofitting an old system, like any advice that you may have for
Well,
for those of us who weren't thinking about public art from the very start of it.
the Sound Transit motto is nothing is easy. So I don't know where we go from there.
Barbara may know.
I would say try to find a small bite. Don't, or, eat the elephant one bite at a time, as they say, and try to find some internal project partners that are excited about the possibility too. Like what Tim was saying with the facilities group, a couple times we've got them able to tap talents they don't usually get to use. So sometimes it's hard to determine what's going to be an easy and what's going to be a hard project. And I don't know, easy and hard, it's the one that you're going to be able to push through is really what you're looking for. And sometimes it may be the one that's really difficult in some ways, that is a problem in the neighborhood, like Lucille's kind of minor graffiti project. I mean, it's having a big impact, but it was trying to address a persistent tagging problem. And the tags are this big, but we've been able to do that one in a way that is very cost effective. Facilities came to us and security came to us, which is great. It's always good to build some kind of internal coalition. So it's not just you pushing these ideas, but if you can all think of what the benefit is going to be to the greater cause. And most people have talents that they don't get to use. We're fortunate that we have a very diverse set of duties and we get to work on kind of fun projects all the time. A lot of people are waiting for that moment where they can show their skills, like Tim got facilities to jump in and do something kind of hard.
Yeah.
People want to do hard
for that
things.
answer.
I'll chime in really quick. Sorry, I can't figure out where the the raise hand button is on Zoom because I don't really use it anymore. But you're talking about retrofitting projects, and I just wanted to point out that buried in in Barbara's very expensive introductory slideshow, we actually have worked on one singular retrofitting project where we replaced glass panels that were plain with glass art, and that's another way that we we can think about us being stewards of our project. Oh, there it is.
Thank you,
So
Elizabeth.
so if you can imagine, all these glass panels used to be really just like that third row you can see at the top. And this was um, a fairly contained budget. So there's ways that we can apply art to existing stations. This station was built, I think it was one of the first sounder facilities that was built in the 90s, and we gave it a brand new life. So
We were also able to give it a brand new life because there was an underlying political situation that we had to solve. And so sometimes you can seize the day with that and get kind of slide in and get something else done if you're solving somebody else's problem.
I love to solve other people's problems. Any other questions? Thanks for that answer, especially the reminder about how internal colleagues are like really important to the success of the program. Anyone else have a question? I see Meg has a hand raised.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm from the city of Henderson in southern Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas, and we're working on with the RTC, the regional transit system, doing some bus rapid transit. And the city is thinking about this art after the fact, as is usually what happens. In my experience in the city of Henderson, our public art program is pretty new, and I've been building it. And so I'm curious if there's any sort of insight or in terms of these sort of after the fact and trying to think of projects in a way that are after the project has been designed and built and thought about. So that's my first question. And my second question is, what is the sort of body that is making these sort of decisions in terms of it's not, I heard the mention of like a commission. Just was curious about that, sort of who's deciding what art goes where and artist selection. Thank you.
Well, I'm hearing two questions
Yes.
there or more. But what Lucille was just showing about swapping out existing glass is a way to go. And there's different levels of fancy glass. You can get kind of an inner layer on glass. There's a vendor called Moonshadow in Oregon that can be very cost effective. If you don't have the means to actually swap out the glass, you can still experiment with like a film on top of the glass, which can be a great test to kind of proof of concept that doesn't show a lot. Your second question about approvals, because we cover such a big region, our predecessors determined that we weren't going to have an internal commission or form an oversight committee, partially because we work with so many jurisdictions that have different approval paths. So we form a pathway with every jurisdiction based on what their cultural committee's format is. And we try to take all of the art projects for review with whatever that body is, because we can point to it in the future. And because we're working with major mature collections like Seattle and King County, where Seattle is, we're also working with tiny towns that have only been in existence for a few years. So sort of the level of what their ability is to review is kind of varied. But it's always good to have outside scrutiny and buy-in, and then like any public program, they hopefully will become your advocates as need be. We try to follow the same practices for developing selection panels using local centric art and design professionals and community stakeholders, and that are a cross section of whoever is living there. It's always tricky, time consuming to get a good age and gender and background knowledgeable cross section, but we try to do it over and over again.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a complicated network of a lot of different populations, so appreciate that thoughtfulness.
Any other questions? Compliments also. It's no problem. Well, question for panel. Jack Becker says, what has been your biggest controversy? With 1 minute to go.
Well, who wants to take that one?
I'll
Ashley
take
Long
it.
raised her hand. She's got a recent one. Okay.
We did have a fairly public controversy that started in 2020. We'd hired artist Donald Lipsky to design a sculpture for a station in Federal Way. Federal Way, for those of you that don't live in the region, is a smaller kind of suburban community south of Seattle, in between Seattle and Tacoma. And the selection panel that we worked with when we were, going through that process wanted to hire artists that were like nationally recognized artists. They wanted to kind of have art that was as good as they, would see in Seattle and other bigger cities. So they hired Donald. Donald, as probably many of you know, has a very whimsical approach to his design for artwork. And he came up with this design concept where there was a tree, and on the top of the tree, there was an elephant standing on one foot, and on the trunk of the elephant was perched a heron. And the intent was like, the trees are important to the Northwest. Elephants kind of represent the different communities. It's a very kind of diverse part of the region, and herons were the local connection. It was really wonderful and a really thoughtful, kind of fun design. But the city of Federal Way did not think, they felt like it was making fun of them in a way. They didn't understand it. They didn't like it. They wanted something a little more kind of approachable, not so whimsical. So it became a very public process of the city saying they did not want this design. And so we had to pivot. We said, we hear you, we understand, we want you to love the artwork. So we asked Donald, and Donald's very open to creating something new for the city. So I would say that is probably one of our more public controversies around artwork design.
Thanks for sharing. I know Donald's not a stranger to controversy either.
Hey,
Yeah, he was ready to surf the wave all the way through, kind of
that was
deflecting comments here and there.
It was great to have an artist that was so experienced go through that with us, and that he kind of knew he didn't take it personally. He understood that he was very, the way he kind of approached it was like, okay, this art is not for this community. So
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. Lots of compliments in the chat. Make sure you're reading those. Yeah, any other questions? Well, this has been a great afternoon or morning or wherever you guys are. So I just want to, we said this in the run through yesterday, but I just want to thank all of you from the START program. Like, it's so hard to boil down everything you've done into like an hour, but you've put together such an inspiring presentation, great examples, great methods. I want to start a, transit performance venue in Pittsburgh now. Yeah, so it's such a cool idea. Just thanks so much. And for everyone, not we, Laura will be posting this and Kip Kobayashi will be posting this on our YouTube channel in a couple days. So, and I guess, Barbara, if people want to follow you, how do they find your program? Do you have your own Instagram or anything like that?
Do we? We haven't been allowed to have our own Instagram, so that's a good cue. We'll work on that. We do have an upgraded website, and I guess we'll just try to have more news there.
Okay, we'll be on the lookout.
Thank you for this chance to talk about all this work. And it's not even all the work. We had to distill it down to what we thought we could share. But there's been so much great work done by the project managers and the artists and the communities being willing to, and this agency that just expects us to do these giant, great projects on schedule. It's quite an opportunity, and we've had a great time doing it, even through all the trials. So it's been great to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm feeling a PAX field trip, sound transit field trip.
We'd
soon.
love to host you. Yeah.
Be so fun. Okay.
Come one, come all. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.